Okay, welcome everyone. Today is July 20th, 2022. It is actually the 53rd anniversary of the first moon landing. So I think that's a nice connection here to our technology-based artistry that we all have here. And this is actually salon number 48. So we're quickly approaching 50 of these. So I think that's pretty cool. So today's subject, I guess I'll introduce myself. I'm Michael Pierre Price. I'm kind of sitting in, hosting and recording today as Colin is hopefully enjoying family time out in Hawaii. So anyway, welcome. We are going to be talking about the subject of adaptation in probably a number of different areas, both in terms of how artists adapt using technology to help maybe supplement the way that they work within any limitations, adaptation in terms of how technology itself has changed over the decades, especially since some of us who've been around to see some pretty marvelous advances of technology over the years. I think we have some good stories and hopefully potentially some good artwork to share in that idea. So without, I guess, much further ado, for those of you who are interested to share some work, use the raise hand functionality at the bottom of the screen, and I will call on you in the order of raised hands. So looks like Renata has volunteered to go first here. So Renata, I'll give you 5 or 10 minutes. And if nobody else raises their hand, you could probably go on even longer. So, but anyway, thanks Renata for volunteering to go first today.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. And I'm talking about adaptation in the sense of how a novel can be adapted for the screen or an image in this case. So this is a work that I did for Negin. It's not a work that was generated like this. In other words, it comes from this. And there is some software that can do captures of animations, and that's where that one came from. So when I looked at this one, you can see there are these shapes that look like a column in a cloud of some sort. And those are my custom brushes that I make. So these are adaptations from graphic novels by a Belgian artist named Hergé. His actual name was Georges Remy, but it was his short name, his nickname. And I'm able to make these by taking a frame from one of his pages and using software, create a brush that has, as you see, it has a kind of, at the ends, it tapers at the ends. And with pressure, you can make it wider or less so. And you can see him, Tintin is in the phone booth at the bottom in England. And at the top, you have the ship from Red Rackham's Treasure. And there's that column that I pointed out to you in the previous image. And the one on the bottom right is a train station scene. This is a different sort of situation where I've made a stage set and I fill it with either my own iconography, which are, I call them elements, and they're biomorphic abstractions, or I use more realistic icons like the lemon and the woman's face, the tree, the face again. At the bottom, you can see 3 of those elements. And then the last way, the stage becomes cinema and it becomes animated. So another way that the work adapts to a different medium or a different format. This is a pretty successful image that I just made a few days ago. It's an amalgam of a number of different ones, and it's a cake with an olive tree. And there's another treatment of it. So adapted into the form of what looks like a bit of an etching. And there's another element put over top of it. And there it is adapted into abstraction again, where you don't read the images, you just see color. It's like a wash. And here's a dark view of it. And this is a screen capture of an animation using that image. And you can see in the bottom left how clear the multifaceted element is. And in the background, it's a little more blurry because it's moving, but because animation is all in 4K, the screen captures can look really clear. And so I'm closing my presentation with this image of the cake that has been morphed by an animation software. And that's it.
Way cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Renata, I missed, did you say what program you were using for the first slide with the different brushes?
Oh, okay. That's a still image from an animation, and the software that I'm using is called Effects.
Effects. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Any volunteers to follow Renata here?
Well, I just wanted to,
Please raise your hand.
oh, I'm sorry. I just had a comment
Okay.
on that. Okay, not yeah. That was great, Renata. It was a really cool series of images and a great example of adaptation, kind of morphing from one type of style of imagery or, execution of graphically of an idea and then morphing it or adapting it for another genre or idiom along the graphic spectrum. So it's cool. I use that word a lot. I didn't realize, but yeah, it's a good, it works.
Thank you, Victor. And I think all of us use so many different formats, sometimes for the same image.
I love your work, Renata.
Thank you very much. And then I will spell that up for you. I'm pretty sure it's spelled EFEKTS.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm always happy to share information with you.
Okay. It looks kind of quiet here. So, oh, yay. Hey, Greg.
I'll go for it.
Okay. Your screen is off right now.
Okay, well, I'll get that fixed. So I am going to, I think you mentioned something about loosely interpretive
Yes.
fit for adaptation. So I'll try and contort my process to fit that as best I can. Tell me if the screen share worked.
Not yet. Oh,
Looks good?
I'm seeing myself on your screen.
Okay, good. So just to give a quick overview, I do algorithmic art. So I work in JavaScript, and I come up with a concept for a composition, and then I write a computer program in JavaScript that basically just runs in the browser, in a browser. And then I create a JPEG file from that. Generally, I print them. But I do some just like some web applications with them. But and my inspiration is really kind of whimsical. So as you can see from the cover page of my website, I'm kind of all over the place as far as what subject matter I want to work with. and I kind of go back and forth between abstract and some representational compositions. But in the past few months, one of the things I started working on was, is the screen sharing working?
Yes.
Okay. I started working on just a more basic abstraction than some of the pieces that I normally do. Some of the algorithms that I write, I would say, are loosely based on some evolutionary processes, which I suppose in a way is not even loosely suggestive of adaptation. And so this series was really just a very simple arrangement of rectangles that went over a patterned background that was just kind of a random algorithm that created some interest to the color field shapes. And I was really kind of like channeling a sort of a Rothko kind of composition in some of these, but trying to put a little bit more complexity into it. And I really liked these. Playing with what the composition might turn into if I pushed it further. And so this was the original series. And then I'll just show a few more. But really, we're just talking about a very basic arrangement of rectangles. But then what's going on in like where you're seeing this is that I'll draw a rectangle over a rectangle in slightly different dimensions. And then I'll use some different algorithms that will blend the red, green, and blue color values mathematically to create essentially different blend modes like you would use in Photoshop, like color burn or color dodge or difference and those kind of things. So really just mathematically combining the colors. So then I took this basic composition based on rectangles and came up with a slightly more elaborate version where this is the basis without any of the color blending, where I'm actually laying the colors right on top of each other without doing any sort of mathematical combination of them. So this gives you an idea of the simplicity of what's going on. And this is where I feel like it ties into evolution, because we see so many things in nature that like the patterns on butterflies and the patterns on actually a lot of insects and birds and different creatures that mimic other creatures or create camouflage. So I started seeing how I could take this and with the blending of those, I started getting a much more complicated composition, such as this one. And then just like in evolution, there are only a few items that actually kind of stand out. And so every once in a while, I was starting to see faces and creatures that were emerging from this incredibly simple arrangement of rectangles, like that one I showed you earlier with the orange and blue. And I'll flip through these quickly because there are a couple in here that really stand out. You start to see some faces emerge. And then definitely in this one here, where I've taken out some of the, made it more monochrome, and I'm trying to find a good one here. This one I loved because as soon as it came out of the iteration, I realized it kind of looked like a lioness standing at a podium or something like that, grasping a book or grasping the podium. Sorry, I'm flipping through quickly. I'm looking for a couple good ones here. Where was it? Oh, this one here I thought was kind of fascinating. Made me think of some sort of Mayan lobster king. But again, it's really just what's going on in here is some sort of random assortment of these rectangles getting mathematically blended together. And then another thing I did with that is then I decided, okay, what would I get if I used a slightly different arrangement? In this case, I turned the rectangles into triangles and had them sit along a horizon line. And using just the same thing, I came up with a very basic abstract landscape, which I thought was kind of beautiful, but also in a way a little bit like, I also felt it was a little bit cliche, but I found these fascinating. And then from that step, I decided, okay, so what if I take it and I put them in more of a radial radial symmetry. And so from there, that went to what I'm calling here Rosette, for lack of a better name, but where's the good one? This is it here, I think. So this taking the same pattern here and then spinning it around on an octagonal matrix. And then if you look in, I don't know how, I can't remember how high a resolution this is, but it's fascinating to me that these, then again, these faces started showing up all the way around, these sort of like screeching tigers or whatever they are, built out of these basic rectangles. And so that's really where I've been going with playing with this. I've moved on from that to something else, and I'd be willing to talk about that as well because it's completely different, but that's about all I wanted to share at this point.
Wow. Thanks, Greg. That was really, really fascinating, and that hits at a lot of my experimentation too, and the notion of evolution and adaptation for me actually go hand in hand. And I think it's that experimentation that happens in the universe around us all the time. So way cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's fascinating how, like, if you delve a little bit into the like the chemistry behind pigmentation and some creatures' skin patterning and that sort of thing, like some really simple geometric forms. But then I love to use anything that uses the term emergence. It's like something starts to come out of something that really, there was no intentionality behind it. There was no design, but then there's something greater comes out of it. And it's kind of fascinating to see that happen.
And what I find really interesting with that as well is that simple rules can create magnificently complex forms. And I think people, that quality of emergence, that's where I think a lot of times people have a hard time not realizing how big the universe is and how long it's been going. And the idea that things are headed in a certain direction. Now that's just us not being able to have a big enough imagination on the cauldron that the universe is constantly making things.
Right, and I agree, and I think it's because it kind of stinks like something from nothing, and when people see something like that, they you know, their nose wrinkles and the hair on the back of their neck goes up, and they think, okay, this isn't true, this can't be.
Yeah, precisely. I loved that about what you were showing, because to me that shows it in a very stark and very tangible way. So both artistic and also educational at the same time.
Thank you.
Okay, come on. Who else wants to come next? Anybody? Okay, well, then if you're going to do that to me, I guess I'll volunteer. And then hopefully somebody else will decide to come in. But so as some of you may know, I have been experimenting with language-based AI most recently. And for me, this has definitely been an evolutionary, adaptable quality to what I've been working on using AI. And I've been trying to do something really challenging on my end. And that is to use the complexity of language to actually generate some qualitative imagery that is somewhat surreal and somewhat abstract, so that it isn't necessarily tangible in a direct way, but almost like dreamlike qualities to the imagery, so that the images allude to potentially something, but it isn't quite exactly what you would expect. And so for me, what I find in language is the complexity of language, the sensibilities that come through in the way we say things. One of the things that I've been fortunate being multilingual is that you realize that the way you think about the way you say things sort of encases you in a certain way of thinking and a certain way of expressing things. Whether it's like in French, you've got nouns that are either male or female, and the way we say things in English, you've got a noun, a verb, and an object. And so we tend to separate things into objects. Having been around some of my indigenous elders and learning language, the Ojibwe language and such, is that things are related to in very relational type ways. So you have the notion of familial context with other elements of the world around you. And so that creates an intimacy there. And so for all of these things, and the ambiguous nature of language are all complexities that I'm trying to toy with this AI to see if I can come up with a visual language that expresses my concepts and my ideas. And so I'm just going to go through a few of these. These are all experimentations still right now that I'm playing through. And they're based on ideas like dreams. This one I called the Junkyard of Monstrous Dreams. And so the idea that oftentimes what we dream about continues to stay with us in one way or another. And there's the notion of the Aboriginals having the sense of the dream time and that being more real than our waking lives. And so what I'm experimenting with through this adaptation that we've now created for ourselves of artificial intelligence, and how we can use that to adapt artwork and for me to help create artwork through words, to me, I find extremely, extremely fascinating. And I'm just starting to scratch the surface, and I'm hoping to continue on with this to get it to be more and more meaningful and more interesting. Part of my interest is in being able to find through a number of friends of mine more powerful technology, or I should say more powerful hardware and some programming expertise, so that I might be able to work on the imagery at a much larger pixel scale. A lot of what you're seeing that I just showed you here is still, for me, very limited in size to about 1.5 million pixels in total, which is, like 1,500 pixels by 1,000 pixels. So for those of us who work digitally, we know that's not a very large image. And if I'm wanting to create things that might be, 40 inches by 60 inches, I want to have a lot more pixels to be able to create larger pieces of work. So anyway, that's my contribution to today's discussion on adaptability. So I don't know, anybody have any questions on what I just showed? Yeah, Victor.
Yeah, I had a comment that Michael, yeah, great work. And it reminds me of like Salvador Dali, but more abstracted. It has a surrealism reminiscent of Dali, but it's much more abstracted. It's moving towards non-objective kinds of things. So I was curious about, you were saying a language-based AI or maybe a text-based AI. I was wondering if you could show one of the images you just showed, your favorite, and maybe share with us the words you used or the language that you input to arrive at that image.
Yeah, sure. So let me bring that back up. And let me go to this one. This one's got a long title. So this one is the text that was used for this was: the emptied soul finds meaning in the deep midnight of despair. Now, I cannot say that the AI used every single word to generate this, but what I have found is that even simple changes in word phraseology can give you radically different images. So word choice does matter. And because the AI, and I know you, Victor, when you had your discussion with Patrick Lichty, Patrick was talking about the generative adversarial networks, this is the same type of approach, but using language to help with the input, is that you basically have static to begin with, and then the text has allusions to imagery that's tied to a database where the words are kept, and then this adversarial network then combats in a programmatic standpoint or sensibility to then help to finally start to create the imagery from there. And for me, it's kind of a starting point that I then take and advance further from there. But for me, what I'm really, like I said, what I'm really trying to achieve is a visual language that is somewhat surreal and somewhat abstract, and hopefully live in a space in between that can, I'm hoping, achieve some sense of what it is I'm inputting as my concepts. Easier said than done, but it's fun. The mad scientist in me is enjoying this very much. So
Great.
I hope that explained it a little bit.
Oh yes, yeah, it did. That was really cool. But thanks for walking us through that.
Thanks, Victor.
Yeah.
All right, good. A few more hands raised. Yay. Jan, it looks like I had you up first, so I'll let you go first. And then Zuhair is afterwards.
Yeah, it just seemed like a good thing to jump on some of your concepts that you're talking about, Michael, because I'm coming at it from a slightly different angle. I'm just going to share one piece with you guys that is in progress. Let me just make sure I've got this. Bear with me.
Sure.
Have it up. So before I play this, as a lot of you know, I'm taking language from audio, words in particular, and adapting them or translating them into these waveforms through various apps in a sort of complicated process. And one of the things that I'm trying to work out is how to, for animations like this, is how do you adapt the word and change it to make it more interesting audio. This one's not quite there, but I'll give you a view of it and we'll see where that's going. Oops. Hold on. Speaking of adaptation, I need a less sensitive mouse.
Good.
Okay, exit screen share, stop share. And yeah, I mean, it's playing around with, again, the theme of language and language's place, and then translating. It's like what we were talking about before, the simple forms sort of becoming something complex. And one of the interesting things about that, the process is it's, you know, going from audio to visual to sometimes moving image and then possibly back to audio again. And one of the fascinating things is during this process, some of the waveforms kind of take on the qualities of, you know, subjectively of the word. One of the word, that particular form was the word time from my voice. And then the soundtrack is what I created, just playing around with the recording of my voice saying time over and over in an audio app and trying to get something different going. I'm not happy with it so far. I think there's it could do more. It does subtle things. I'm not sure that the music is right for that particular piece, music sound. But yeah, in the discussion of adaptation, is super interesting. One, to be inputting language in the manner, Michael, that you're inputting it in, and then I'm sort of doing this sort of other end of it, like taking audio and messing with it and trying to make these images. But I'm also interested in how we adapt. Like I have a significant tremor, so like I don't, technology has helped me out with being able to move on and still create, where, you know, traditional methods, like I can still do a lot of them, but as I was saying before, photography without a tripod, and mind you, image stabilization is getting better and better. That, you know, instead of jerking up and down, I get, you know, a nice sort of wave happening, which you can exploit these things as well, which is part of it. So that's my 2 cents.
That's really cool. So it's Jan, I mean, it's so interesting because, I mean, traditional societies saw that I mean, you take a look at the Bible. I mean, you look at the sense that something isn't real till it's spoken, and that you speak the word and it becomes real. It's manifest.
Yeah.
So I find that whole concept really fascinating, connecting. My other question for you is, I know you've concentrated primarily like on a single word. Is that limitations on hardware, or is that just a focus of your artistry to like focus on a single word, a single concept versus like say a sentence or a phrase?
It's interesting. Thank you for asking that. I'm struggling with writing out some of the philosophy behind this, and one of them is that idea that to speak is to create, and also the fact that these end up in these sort of geomorphic forms, and the relationship between language and land is something I find really fascinating, because it's mutually influential as the territories we live in. And now I'm rambling. I forgot. Yeah. Oh yes, sentences as opposed to single words. I'd like to explore that. One of my concerns in the process is that it won't be defined enough visually for me. The other issue, that's the main issue, I think, but one of the things I hope to do is, because I do have an interest in music as well, is something choral with all the words. Like the list of words I've used so far is kind of short. There's many variations of time. So there's time, desire. There's 2 variations of love, crazy and psycho. And throwing like doing something sort of modernist with the language and a choral thing is like rearranging those words and getting a sentence in something that is acoustically pleasing or challenging would be, I'm hoping to get there at some point, but this is like huge project wise. But yeah, thanks for asking.
All right.
Have you ever encountered the work of Julian James?
The name sounds familiar. I'm not sure that I have.
So he wrote a book like in the late 60s, early 70s that dealt quite a bit with the power of the spoken word, and really in relationship to the rhyme and meter of poetic speech.
Cool.
In ancient times. And
Right.
I'll put information about it in the chat, but it's really a fascinating book.
Yeah, thanks.
He ties it into so many cultural instances.
Yeah, and one of the things this is interesting for me too is just how art has moved through language to, there's sort of language-based artists like Jenny Holzer, and that struggle that's been there is visualizing language, or language is now visualizing through AI and through a process like mine, which I find really fascinating, because we make, as visual artists, we make pictures because words often aren't adequate. Then we write a lot about them and we talk a lot about them. So anyways.
Okay, next up, Zuhair.
Hello, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Honestly, I'm not prepared. I've been wanting to come to the salon for so many weeks. I just prepared something that is from my most recent project, which is part of my NFT residency with a website that is voice.com. I gotta say, I'm trying to move between mediums since I started with art. I guess I started with, I don't remember which year, but it was since the 1 megapixel camera. When I got one, it just blew my mind, and I loved also analog photography, and I would experiment and try to disassemble it and ruin the signal. So I love the glitch that will happen, whether in video even, and on digital mediums. And my most recent project is because I applied to a residency, which is something that I've done before, but not in terms of NFT or the blockchain or anything like that. And I used sort of, you, Michael, inspired me to actually talk today because I'm using Midjourney, which is a prompt-based artificial intelligence that basically I send a sentence and it sends back 4 iterations that are visual. But I tried to get out of the medium because I'm trying to always experiment with mediums. Like I haven't stuck to any medium yet. And since we're talking just about adaptation, I'd like to say something about that. I started like documentary filmmaking, working as a filmmaker, but also experimenting with sound design, creating music. Even though I'm not a musician, I don't know how to play any instrument, but I always like to experiment and try things audiovisually, no matter what they are. And having to be displaced from my country since 2017, I had to move to digital mediums. It was a necessity, and that's the adaptive part. I'd like to share my screen, and I'm not sure if sound will be heard, but still, we can see the image.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
If you select computer audio, Zuhair, when you share, look at the bottom left for 2 checkboxes. There's computer audio and another one. That'll help with the audio.
So I'm on iPad. I'm not sure how that translates. Maybe for next time, that's why I'm not prepared. Maybe for next time, I'm gonna figure it out. Can you see my screen though?
Not yet.
Okay, just a sec. Thank you for your patience. I think you can see it now.
Yes.
So these are my most recent works with Midjourney, but I'm just experimenting here. The thing is, I don't like doing static images with it because that's what we're seeing so much, even though it does satisfy some sort of like thirst towards creating images with it that are almost photographical. And I'd like to share these works. So you can't hear sound, right?
Yes.
لا تنتظر شتاء يروي القحط للفصول أيضا عثرات لا تنتظر حصادا لقمح زرع في صحراء لا تنتظر حبا واحتمالات الحب نضبت لا تنتظر غدا واللحظة تنسل بين الأصابع لا تنتظر مسيحا فالقيامة أنت وأنت القيامة
So just to make sure we're able to hear sound.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm gonna play the second one then. It's also 1 minute.
لم أقطع جذورا هو الجدب أتلفها هو القحط دفنها عبثا قاومت رمالا مالحا طويلا تغاضت عن وجوه كالحة فلا بد من الرحيل صوب الشمس.
Honestly, I'm not sure whether to play another one or should I stop because I don't want to take too much time.
No, go ahead.
So what do you think?
No, please feel free.
All right. All right, they're all 1 minute, so it's not going to take too much of your time. one more. Thank you.
Wow,
Thank you so much.
those are beautiful and powerful.
Really powerful,
Yeah.
beautiful work.
Thank you, really. The story behind them, the name of the collection, they're made out of 8 audiovisual pieces. And the name is Diasporic Daymares, diaspora coming from immigration, and daymares as a nightmare that you might experience during the day. And the story behind it is I actually collaborated with every member from my family. So my parents, my siblings, a cat, a virtual human, and my wife. So basically, I'm now based in Colombia, and I come from Lebanon. And in August 2020, there was a huge explosion at the capital city. And I was in the streets cleaning up, trying to help people as much as I can. And the only thing that I was able to do to help out, really, take someone in, was actually to take an animal in, because so many pets lost their homes. So one of the pieces, like the last one, is actually a depiction of a cat's nightmare, because when I had the cat, it would actually have nightmares. And that's why I used AI, because I could just go all the way with imagination. That's the economy of ideas, whatever you want to call it. And the rest is poetry made by my father, recited by my father and mother for the first 2 videos. So it's a very personal project that is that I tried to do as a foundational one. And I'm using NFTs for one main reason, is because of the financial situation, to try to rise above it, to leverage this technology and art to actually help out my family. That's why I went with NFTs, because I don't want to have third parties as much as I can, even though it is part of a residency, but all they offered is support. And as I said, there are 8 audiovisual pieces. I just showed you some of them. There's also fractal art, and there's also glitch art, because I met my wife online, and I've never saw her really clearly because of the bad connection there. So I used the glitch art to reconstruct that. I want to try to see if I do have it. Just a second. Oh no, it's not here. That's too bad. Yeah, but yeah, I'd like to maybe show it later on. And yeah, if we communicate later on, I could send links. It's all online. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Yeah. You could feel the personal quality of all of it. So yeah, it definitely comes through.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. Thank you.
Okay, so any other volunteers or anybody want to share anything more of artwork? Anyone? If not, we can open up for discussion either on the work that's been shown, ideas on adaptation, or anything else you all might want to talk about or share. we still have a half an hour or so to go. So up to you all. This is our time here. So yeah, Renata.
I'm seeing that a few of us have been using AI recently, and it's a very new situation. And I really wonder sometimes about, I mean, the quality of the images is very poor in terms of resolution. So that's going to change presumably. But for me, sometimes I just feel like I'm a cyborg because part of my mind is the machine doing it. And I always try to disguise it really heavily. I never want it to look like it was made by one of those engines. So I'll like glitch the image, and then I'll change the filter, and then I'll double, like, what's the word when you double exposure with another image, and just keep working it and working it and working it. And I'm very, very specific when I don't like the color, for example, then I'll tell it what kind of color I want. And I keep changing as it goes along. So I just wanted to share that and ask if anybody has any sort of ethical issues with people using AI for art.
You know what? Define. In other words, what do you think what sort of issues?
Well, I just feel like I don't want to give my work out without the look of me, of my hand on it.
Okay.
But I think, yeah.
Let me. This is a conversation. Actually, there's a guy who's been fairly well known in the AI range, who I've known for decades. A guy named Casey Rees, and this is gonna sound overblown, but he and I had this conversation, I think 2018 or 2019. There was a summit in Dubai called Belief in AI that was put forth by the Dubai Future Foundation, and he was there. I was there. A couple of the guy at Serpentine was there. And so anyway, basically, kind of an early AI summit. And the one thing that I think he made was kind of like this. He made a really good argument in saying that painters, there was a shockwave with painters when photography came, and and that led to Manet. We went from Tintorello to Manet. So I think that these things change things. I think that there are. Actually, I was in Midjourney, and what was it? One of the developers, Dan, was in office hours, and it was interesting listening to him. And I'm actually doing an essay for one of the intellect publisher journals, and it's just kind of really, to me, I don't think this is about aesthetics. I think it's about writing. I think it's about concrete writing. So the thing is that. And then the other thing is concrete writing, and then also the idea of concrete prose as code as well. And so the thing is that if we think about this as, I agree with Reason saying that, this is sort of like the new apparatus, or this is, kind of a new sort of apparatus that creates images. But but the thing is to see that in and of itself, I think is kind of red herring. And so the thing is that these other aspects of the process here, I think are going to wind up becoming more open. The one thing I'm a little bit worried about is kind of what happened back in 1990 when Aldous PageMaker came out, and basically, a lot of graphic designers were put out of a job because, my brother-in-law can do PageMaker. Yeah. And so the thing is that I think the one thing that's really important to think about is that these engines have an aesthetic, You know, they have an aesthetic, they have a they have biases. Actually, what was really interesting, we were talking with Dan at Midjourney about about the racial biases that the that the data set has for this. In other words, if you say you cybernetic wizard, there's this old white guy, and so it's just a matter of saying, okay, what are the specific, what are the aesthetics of these machines? They're kind of like mechanical Turks, right? In other words, it's the matter of how you use a camera, as opposed to saying that I hit the shutter and the camera makes the image for me. And the thing is that it's the matter of the mastery of the apparatus. And I mean, let's put it this way. There's a ton of people making selfies and before there were a ton of people making pictures with the brownie camera and that sort of thing. I mean, McLuhan tells us that when there's a new technology, it reshapes the landscape, but it doesn't eliminate the things before them. So the thing is that I think for a while we're going to wind up with this huge profusion of images that are going to have the same sort of quality. It reminds me when Bryce was really popular. Mm-hmm. If anybody's that old, that Bryce, the ray trace landscape software from Fractal Design and that sort of thing. There were all these beautiful landscapes, all these beautiful ray trace landscapes. And the thing is that I think we're going through one of those periods and where we have, one of these kind of like apparatus based aesthetics that's going to dominate for a little while. But then I think it's going to pass. And, and I also think that real artists, and excuse me for getting in that, is who is a real artist? Those are the ones that get underneath the skin of the engine.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that really, bend them to their will. So, I mean, I'm sorry for going on a bit, but this is something I'm writing a journal article on. And, it's, I think there are some artists who are just almost in despair, with this stuff. And I think there are some artists who, are really fascinated. I mean, myself, I just see it as another major technological evolution. And the thing is that it'll become less trendy. And, some people will wind up actually using these, in some very interesting ways. But I think a lot of people are making endless anime girl warrior mecha dragon tentacle things. If that makes sense. But actually, the thing is a lot of the work that I'm seeing here that that you folks are doing with this. I mean, it's beautiful stuff. But the thing is that how far does it diverge from what resonates with you? And I think that's the question that I have with these things. And I think myself being a bit of a Duchampian and a Dadaist and a Fluxus artist, I like to throw spaghetti on the wall and take a look at the pattern and say, oh, well, that's cool. But this idea of how tightly focused is your attention, intention on these things, and I think I mean, I think I'm going to probably make a couple of series of 24 and then I'll probably just cancel my subscription, unless I see some really radical things happening with it. And, I'll probably go back to my 3D scanning for a while.
It seems to me that a lot of this is sort of similar to musical sampling. And, there's someone actually making the source material in this stuff. They're actual you could say they're actual artists who you're pulling your source material from. And it feels to me like a lot of these pieces are dependent on the database, the data that they're pulling stuff from. They have a particular look that is really driven by the material that it's sampling. And so I think the original artists are probably quite important in what the outcome of the algorithmic art is as well. But the one difference maybe with the music is that here you have an algorithm, which is the intermediary instead of a person who is in the music who's doing the sampling. And that might be a little bit of a difference there.
I don't know, Lee, whether there are artists, because my sense of this is that it's actually combing the internet for images that match the words.
The work has particular looks to it, though.
Well, it doesn't always. It depends who's using it.
Yeah, Renata, I mean,
parameters, that define certain artists,
exactly. And that's the thing. A lot of, if you take a look at the term is, what are your prompts? What are you prompting the AI to utilize? And there are a whole slew of artists that get referenced depending on the style of art that some people want. If it's a sci-fi look and you want to do a complex, sci-fi floating platform or something, here's the artist for that, or this artist or that artist. And so, I think what Patrick was saying, and again, what Lee was saying as well, is this is potentially, there is a similarity to photography in some regards, obviously. And I think that whenever you have a new technology that can be rather all-encompassing, most people will gravitate to the simplest way of using the application. If they can find, oh, look, I can create this kind of artwork or that kind of artwork with just add water and stir, and there you go. But I think what Patrick was saying is that the real artists, those that see this as a tool, there's an evolutionary aspect to this. And for me, all I can say is kind of what I'm doing is I don't care about replicating another artist, because that's not where my interest is. My interest is in language, to see if I could, like I said, to develop my own sort of visual language. But there's limitations right now to that. And for me, the limitation on the size of the work, for me, is frustrating to some degree. I can still create, fairly sizable pieces, but as you and I were talking about just a few days ago, Renata, the fact that for the most part, I'm still limited to 1.5 million pixels is a very small sampling. If I want to create something larger that could see in between the pixels that are not in that original size, the best I can do is upsample. But upsampling isn't adding new data. It's just sort of helping to massage what's in between the smaller sample into making something that looks decent at a larger size. And so for me, having those extra millions and millions of pixels to create really interesting works that have more dynamic range to it is where my interest lies. And also because I hate being limited by what the original programming was, I'm trying to find some programmers I can work with that might be able to help do things, and also look at what those samples are because to me that's a big factor in all this as well.
You know, in 2 years, once they've sucked up all the experience of people putting all this information in there, they're going to sell you that. So don't worry, it'll be there.
I still maintain that it's coming straight from the internet, because Anne Spalter gave a talk about a month ago, and she's stated that she was just asking for airplane images and that she liked the compositions that the AI engine gave her. And I have a big problem with the compositions, but what I'm doing that's interesting for me right now is creating a mood based on the art of the past and other art forms of the present. So for example, I'll put in Max Ernst, Zaha Hadid, who's an architect,
Yep.
Wes Anderson, who's a film director, and see what kind of mood or feeling it can conjure up. And I'm always changing, and I'm really trying to bring the art of the past in.
I think of it as an instrument. You know, I think like a musical instrument. How do you play it? You know, in other words, a musical instrument has a certain tone. It has a certain quality. Yeah, I mean, say like a guitar, you can put guitar pedals on it. You can do all these different things to change the thing. But nevertheless, you know, it has 6 strings. It has frets. You know, it has a certain way that you manipulate. You know, the apparatus once again. You know, and that sort of thing. And then the thing is that I mean, it isn't like there aren't different artists like Django Reinhardt and Eddie Van Halen and all that sort of thing. They're totally different, but they're both playing guitars, you know, and I think this might be where we're at. You know, we might wind up, you know, with, you know, people who are really good at playing these instruments.
And finding out what you want to say too. I mean, the technology hopefully assists you in that. You know, I also wonder about how it's changing us too. Like you know, we're working with it all the time, and you can see the influence of it on us. I think, you know, and what gets produced, the choices you make.
I mean, I'm halfway thinking of taking some of these images and taking them back to the pen plotter. You know, I mean, you know, in other words, there's a part of me that does not want to be satisfied with these images in and of themselves.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that, you know, in working with the CNC machine, I leave tool marks, but I carve it as well. It's like, because on its own, it's too sterile.
Yeah.
That was one of the issues with, you know, translating the digital and then trying to bring the hand back into it, you know.
I think we're still at the point where this thing that we're just getting used to these things, and you know, it's setting up the source material, and then
Breaking up.
You're breaking up. You're breaking up.
just, you know, some of these things that are just spitting out source material, and then I think we're going to get to the point where we're going to start looking at this as source material for other works.
You know, I had
Yeah, Pat,
Just
play with your. Go ahead.
I had a question. You know, I haven't had a chance to actually work with any of these AI, you know, apparatus, as you say. And I think something that you did, Patrick, where you created imagery and you fed your own imagery into the algorithm.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a good gambit for creating your own signature using the tool, but your own style could emerge. That's just intuitively. Is there one program that lends itself to putting your own images in rather than feeding off a database?
Sure. I mean, there was, I mean, I was using Night Cafe. That does that quite well. But the one thing that I was in office hours at Midjourney today, and you know, and I also actually have a couple other tools. Like I have an Excel based prompt maker. In other words, that you type in things, or you see as numbers of drop downs, and it makes all these parameters for you. I've been getting these tools that make prompts, and I think it's really super interesting. And the thing is Dan at Midjourney was saying the one thing that he is really surprised that people are not using are image prompts. In other words, you can start from a source image, and most people don't. And he says apparently there's a lot of folks that haven't gotten so far into the tool that they don't know that you can start with an image source and go from there.
Yeah, so that's definitely possible, Victor, through a number of the tools that are out there. And I definitely find using that and almost like an iterative process of creating something from an image of mine as an initial image, get a number of images from that, and then pick something there and then feed it back in again and do that, any number of times. So yeah, and again, but like what Patrick was saying, is that's really up to the artist to see that this is really just a tool that you're using. And I think that's one of the hallmarks of artists, is that sense of creativity, experimentation. And yeah, you have to spend a little time learning a new tool, and you may just scratch the surface. But I think as part of an artist's spirit, it's like, okay, now what can I do? Now what can I do? And then that's where you look under the hood a little bit more and see, okay, what's really going on here? And how do I make this more interesting, to match my aesthetic or where I want to go with things?
I mean, in this day and age where, the tools are so fluid and so many, I'm gonna take 2 points in time. In like 1994, 1995, I mean, there was a regional art exhibition in Northeast Ohio that I got best in show for, and and a couple of the other artists, in the show, basically, let's have some coffee, and they said, can you tell us what program you use? And I said, well, I'll tell you what program I use if you tell me what brushes and oil paints you're using. And it says, what do you mean? I just said, I said, I'll tell you straight out, it's Photoshop. And it says, how did you get this? I said, I have my own. No, it was in the late 90s, but I said, I have my own printer, and, I know how to use it, and I know how to, apply lacquer, and I know how to do all these sorts of things. And I said, oh, I thought you just, took a photo and you hit a button. And I just said, well, it isn't like that. Now, the thing is that there are a lot of artists, these days that personally, I have trouble not being frustrated with a little bit, who basically are relatively new. They come in, they've either learned Cinema 4D, or, they're just saying, hey, look, I just found this new app and I just hit a few new buttons and there's this cool stuff and I'm going to go hang it off the blockchain. And, where there are those of us who have trained and practiced and all this sort of thing for like decades. And I'm sorry, it's a little irritating, and, but the thing is that, I know this happens, but, once again, this goes back to my argument, is that, there's some people who punch buttons. There are people who are quick talents. There are people who, have, very refined sensibilities and have just worked their butts off for decades. And, there's a lot of room for everybody. But the thing is that, I think this is a challenging time in which we have a lot of converging technologies right now, and a lot of images and a lot of work coming out. And the thing is, it's a very noisy period right now.
I tend to think of it as a chess game. I think of the computer and the programs as the opponent. When I make a move, then it makes a move.
There you go. Yeah.
I
That's
just
very
wanted to
interesting,
mention,
Lee.
DALL-E because we're not mentioning it, but
Yeah.
it's indistinguishable from reality. And I've been testing it with my friends, sending them things, and they just don't know. It looks like a photograph, even though the quality is still reduced, like low. But today, two changes happened with like regulation with Midjourney and DALL-E. So DALL-E has only 100,000 people, and it's going to open in the upcoming weeks for millions of people. And it's going to be open for commercial use because right now it is not. And Midjourney has actually changed the regulations, as I learned from friends. I didn't read it yet, but I did read the DALL-E one. And someone told me, I was shocked, but apparently Midjourney considers that they own every prompt you do and every image that you produce with it, up until the point that it's not too edited or whatever. I think there's a percentage of post-processing that they consider that right now it is yours, but they still have the 20, 30%, 10% that you used it for.
Wow.
And I don't want to be too intrusive and like, but I can share my screen just a second. I have like 4 images that just look really hyper realistic if you want to take a look at them.
Yeah.
If not, I'm just
Sure.
happy for you. Okay. All right.
Sure.
So
And then crayon as well.
it's a really good imitator. It's crazy.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of absurdism myself, actually.
So that's one of them.
That's DALL-E.
DALL-E
That's DALL-E.
too.
When you see this at the bottom right, that's DALL-E. These colors.
Yeah. DALL-E 2 or
That's DALL-E. Yeah, DALL-E 2.
Okay, I don't have access to that. I've only been able to find DALL-E Mini.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
on the wait
they're really
list.
different. They're really different.
Yeah.
But they're gonna open for millions soon. So I think within this month, we're all gonna be able to use it.
Mm.
These are just example. I do have like hundreds, not hundreds, probably like 60 more. And it's gonna be payment based. Right now it's for free, and they open just to selected few. I don't know what basis they use for that, but I did apply twice. I think that helps. Yeah, I have things that are just, they're gonna blow your guys' mind, and I think the debate would have changed if you took a look at them. But yeah, I don't have an opinion yet. I'm too young for that to have a, yeah.
You know, there's that classic essay, you know, from the early 20th century, Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction by Walter Benjamin and that sort of thing. And I think we're looping around that again. But the thing is now we're going from painting to photography. Now we're going from photography to, you know, to algorithmic imaging, you know, and the thing is that, you know, I think the funny thing is that, you know, Benjamin was talking about getting you know, the loss of the aura, the loss of the value of the piece, you know, through reproduction. And I think that we are scrambling to try to keep that valuation through the NFT. You know, somehow, you know, in other words, like trying to capture the aura of the digital image through the NFT, and, you know, which I think is a really interesting thing. But, you know, these engines are really interesting. But I have a strange possible prediction that this may create a resurgence in traditional painting in the fine art market. In other words, saying is, okay, great, we have all this stuff, that's fine, you know, then, but the thing is that what we want is that we want something with a sense of realness, materiality, and that sort of thing, which was our last talk, you know. And it's this sort of like thing, you know, it's like I can punch buttons all I want, or I can find parameters all I want, and that sort of thing, get something and print it out, and yeah, that's great. But, you know, I think that and I hate to use this word, but yet I'm starting to get kind of like art worldy, but, you know, to a connoisseur, there's going to be something that they're going to want to be able to hook onto the sensibility of a human being, you know. And I don't know, you know, because, you know, with the whole post-internet thing, there was this, I'm sorry, I'm very passionate about this moment moment in time. It's just because I think it's really interesting, and I also find it a little bit threatening. I mean, for the 50th anniversary of Art Forum, there was a article by Claire Bishop called "The Digital Divide," and that was in 2006, 2007, and she was basically saying, let's just chuck all this digital stuff out of the art world because of the fact that it doesn't have a materiality. It's, you know, there's no virtuosity to it. There's, you know, all these sorts of things. And this gave rise to the entire post-internet movement. Now, the thing is I think that we could possibly be at another critical point, you know, that, you know, with this stuff saying, okay, there's something about the quality of these engines that, you know, and their ease of creation of images and that sort of thing that calls for a gesture of some sort at the cultural level.
It's an interesting circular thing with AI, because I haven't used it at all, but it's everything we've input. So it's like coming from humans, and then it's being altered and adapted and changed and sort of fed back. So I find that really interesting.
But the one thing that I spent some time with Steve DePaulo over at Simon Fraser over in Vancouver. And, you know, if you haven't checked his work out, yeah, I mean, he's doing, you know, machine learning based stuff, and he's got these modules he chains together and that sort of thing. And his work is astounding. And the thing is, what he's kind of telling me is like, you know, these image based, you know, engines, you know, that they're so bound to the initial conditions upon the initial image set.
Yeah.
You know, and this is one thing that I think is so important. You know, in other words, it's like these things are so, but it's sort of like how Deep Dream, at first it was like all the dogs on Google search. So it's like, you know, you did the animations like that Bob Ross thing. You know, it's like, it looks like, you know, there's all these puppies popping out of Bob Ross. You know, and you know, I think it's a good metaphor actually.
All right, we're just about out of time here. So is any last thoughts on this subject? Thanks for bringing it up, Renata. It's I think this is a subject that has some legs to it. So we may continue on at a future date with this as well, because I think it's an area a lot of us are interested in, and there's definitely some potential issues.
How about a topic of the obsolescence of the artist?
And in many ways, I feel like there has been no progress. If you go back to the beginning of photography, photographers were knocking themselves out to make their photographs look like paintings. They would stage still lifes and portrait things in compositions that they stole from paintings. Then they started painting on the black and white photographs in hopes it would look more like a painting.
Well, the thing is,
it's still there, and we're still there. I still hear all of you saying you wish that your computer generated thing looked more like a painting.
Well, you know, this is McLuhan. You know, in other words, it's like, you know, in McLuhan's, if you're not into Marshall McLuhan, he did this thing called the Tetrad, and it had 4 questions. It's like, what does it obsolescence, and what does it, you know, what does it bring back, you know? And so, I mean, and then I forget the other 2, but those are the things, like, you know, what does it take away? What does it bring back?
Yeah.
And the thing is that, you know, this is that right there. And then really, to me, and I'm just going to say this very briefly, is that originally when I had thought of adaptation is the fact that I was a computer engineer. Actually, I was with Tandy Corporation. I was in their QA thing, and then I was a systems engineer for about 5 to 7 years. And I you know, I've had images with my eyesight. I mean, I've had issues with my eyesight all my life. And so the thing is that, you know, I couldn't see I couldn't see to work with the integrated circuits well enough. And so, you know, I quit, and I became a graphic designer and artist and that sort of thing. So the thing is that, adaptation to one's situation is one of the reasons why I became an artist. And I think that was really kind of more what I was getting at from my perspective. And I think Jan was kind of talking about that a little bit. And, but the one thing is that I think that, kind of like doubling the metaphor, the idea of taking one's regime of personal circumstances, and then adapting it, once you've decided to be an artist or designer or whatever you want to call yourself, to to that situation. And then, when you wind up, in what I'd call media like this, then, how do you then take your personal situation and adapt it as, you're in a highly, and I use this word kind of provocatively, a highly fungible situation, while people are trying to make things non-fungible.
Okay, so on that note, I am going to end our recording and thank everybody for sharing today. And we'll continue the discussion off camera as it is. And thanks, everybody.
Thank you for hosting.
Thanks so much, Michael.